Raymond, I'm going to ask a provocative question, but I think it's an important one. Do you think the religion of Islam is compatible with the West?
No, it's not. And if you mean by the West, the sort of secular liberal West, it's certainly not. If the West believes in freedom of religion and gender equality and everything that the West, prizes, well, in Islam, it's not that there's a radical interpretation. Honestly, it's not. Like I told you, that's the observant interpretation, which is that. So, for example, you have to hate the non-Muslim. Is that something that, if you're living in a liberal Western secular society, you really want a group of people who are bound to feel that way towards you? How's that going to work out? Oh, I know how it works out. Just look at the UK, right? There are built-in teachings in Islam inherently, not a lot. I'm not saying the whole religion. There's a lot of it that's actually neutral, maybe some of it that's admirable, but there are just enough that bring it at odds with the things that the West actually prizes. Okay. Killing blasphemers or, attacking them. So in the West, freedom of expression and art and whatnot. And then, what was his name? Van Gogh, that guy gets killed, right? Because, well, in the Muslim world, everyone would agree with that and they would pat him on the back because that's what you do. So the religion itself has built-in sort of mechanisms that does make it antithetical to a lot of the things that the West prizes.
And so I guess the next question is, if it's completely antithetical, is it therefore an existential threat to the West?
Yeah. Again, it gets murky when you realize, so what are we talking about? Islam, I'm almost, it's kind of like I'm anthropomorphizing it as if Islam's a man. Islam is made up of Muslims. And I already readily agree. A lot of Muslims are not real Muslims, are not observant Muslims, or cultural Muslims, or secular Muslims. You have a lot of that. Mm-hmm. I get that. And they, presumably can assimilate. And I'm sure a lot of them do. But the problem is you have the teachings exist. And though the teachings themselves are the existential threat, because there will be people who do adhere to those teachings. And once they do, they become the bad guys, okay? Which and nobody wants to see. It's funny, every time I look at Muslims attacking someone randomly in Europe, for example, and all of a sudden it's dismissed as, oh, he had mental problems. Oh, he had psychological issues. No, he was actually, that's how we see it. But no, he was actually following a directive and something that breeds a certain contempt and hatred for precisely the kind of person he attacked, okay? So, again, I'm not trying to say that would be scaremongering if I was sitting here to tell you every single Muslim wants to kill you no, they don't. I get that. You know how many Muslims that you can look at today and you might be like, well, is this guy dangerous? And then tomorrow that guy converts to Christianity. But for 10 years, and I've known them, this guy has been conflicted. And for those 10 years, he was not even a Muslim, and he was almost a Christian. So my point is, you don't know. There's a lot of these people. There's so much gray. And a lot of them are not a threat. A lot of them are great people, okay? But again, it's how do you differentiate and how do you know? And this is why, it's nice and it's good for the West to not discriminate, okay? But on the other hand, by not discriminating or just being intelligent, we're going back to the analogy of, 100, candies and one even is poisonous and it is. And okay, the 99 didn't cause the problem, but the one will. And that's why you continuously have the attacks that you continue having, because in as much as you keep taking these numbers, there's a percentage that's going to come with the violence, and those things are antithetical to Western culture.
So that being the case, the UK is in the situation it's in. If you were advising the UK on this particular issue, what policies would you put in place? What advice would you give the government?
Yeah, well, that's not that easy because, the UK has really dug itself deep already. It's one thing to say, hey, we don't want to bring in too many Muslims, okay, like these other countries we were mentioning. But when you already have, what is it? You said 4 million? Mm-hmm. It's, well, first of all, anyone who's illegal, I would say has to go immediately. I mean, if you're there illegally, no more coming in. I don't know if they do this, but I would really be monitoring mosques and the Islamic kind of programming and what Muslims are being exposed to, including on the internet, which I'm sure is not so easy. So, and this is, at one point you start wondering, is it worth all this? Like, what does a Western nation get from having to live constantly on its toes just to be able to live side by side with Muslims? But I guess, again, in this case, I get it because they're already there, right? But I would have no compunction or sympathy for any sort of radical preaching. I mean, I see in the UK radical Muslims screaming, like actual Islamic jihadist stuff,
Yeah.
and they don't get in trouble. But then when a British person fights back, they get arrested. Okay, so this is what I'm telling you. This is the real problem right now. And so when you tell me what advice I could give, how about start off by just being objective and without this two-tier system where you're actually oppressing the natives and empowering those who are actually, pushing for this sort of thing, the jihadist mentality.
Would you do more hardline approaches? For instance, something like banning halal, banning facial coverings, banning burqas.
The facial covering that's a security reason. In fact, in Muslim countries, it's sometimes the case. Women can't wear the hijab because sometimes you get a terrorist.
Well, like I said, in Uzbekistan,
Yeah.
you can't wear full face cover.
Yeah, so for sure, there's no problem with that. And if there's a way to stop the sort of de-ghettoize them, so they do possibly assimilate instead of always kind of living closely knit, and it's like I said, a small ribat or an Islamic fortification. It's not very easy. I mean, I think, and especially for the mentality that prevails right now in the UK and its leadership. Like I said, you're asking me, let's say this is neutral, you're asking me the measures they can take. They're still here, where they're attacking their own, and you can't, what country tells its citizens you can't, wave your flag? I mean, this is one of the things that I often point out. If you want to know how insane it is in Europe, always look at by analogy, other non-Western regions. And guess what? Like I made this argument recently, I don't know if you use the same terminology, but in America, the ultra-right is like the bad guy. This is like the racist, xenophobe, crazy patriot. And to me, the ultra-right is actually how everyone outside the West thinks and acts. Okay, they're all, if you go to any country, non-Western, sub-Saharan, Asian, Latin American, what we call ultra-right, traditional, you like your country, you like your flag, that's normative there. And the ones who support it most are their own governments. That's what they want you to be like. It's very weird to go to a nation like the UK where, you're the bad guy because you're waving your nation's flag, but then these people are coming in waving their flags, including ISIS, and that's okay. I mean, so the UK's problems, man, they're just kind of mind-boggling. I don't even know where to begin. It's just, it's really warped.